Hey everybody, it's Greg Farrar here in the music office at Holy Trinity. This week's video in our Getting Started series is on having the right tools for the job. Let's roll that intro. Hey everyone, it's Greg. Welcome to the channel. Please take a moment and like this video and subscribe, especially if you find it helpful. That really helps me out as we're continuing to build content for music ministry within the church. This week we are talking about the tools that we need to be effective in music ministry. Here at the parish, the number one tool that we all use every single week is a tool called Planning Center Services. Planning Center Services. Planning Center is how we schedule you, how we distribute charts, how we distribute MP3 recordings so that you can prepare for the weekends. And it's the tool that we all use and reference to know what's going on in music ministry. So Planning Center has several different facets to it. We've talked about the calendaring aspect, so you will receive an email or a text message, depending on how you set up your profile in Planning Center, that will let you know you've been requested to serve for this upcoming weekend, or you've been requested to serve on August the 5th, or whatever the particular case is. And you have an option when that comes in. There'll be a button on your phone that looks like this, and you can either click accept or decline. So that's a tool that helps me out to let me know if you're going to be in for a particular weekend. When you hit accept or you hit decline, that makes me happy. Either way, we're sad when you're not here, so when you hit decline, we're a little bit sad, but we're also happy because now we can plan and know that you're going to be away. So that is the calendaring aspect of Planning Center Services. The other thing that Planning Center does is it gives us all of our charts for a given week. It gives us our playlist, it gives us our set of charts. So as you are preparing, we're going to do another video in this Getting Started series for how to prepare for Sunday. But for this particular video talking about tools, is you'll be able to see everything within that week's playlist that we need to have prepared as we come into rehearsal. So under this, you'll also be able to see files. You'll be able to see different kinds of files. We usually have files for keyboard players called, or KS at the end of the abbreviation for keyboard sheet, or we'll have a lead sheet. A lead sheet in our organization means it's the lead line or the melody line with chord symbols above. Sometimes you will see a chord sheet. I really don't encourage people to use chord sheets. We do have some of them in Planning Center. I highly discourage you from using a chord sheet. Even if you were a guitar player, there are valid reasons to have the melody and notation in front of you. Sometimes you will see a VS, vocal sheet. That is for situations where in addition to the lead line or the melody, we'll also have vocal parts. So soprano, alto, tenor, bass, or SATB. Those will be there for vocal sheets. For those of you that sing parts, you'll find that under VS. You'll also see C instrument, or sometimes solo instrument. Doesn't mean like solo, like it's a solo for someone to sing. It means it's a solo instrument like a flute or a violin, usually a flute. All right. So the other thing we'll find under Planning Center is a set of recordings. So this is something I need to be better about. We often post recordings, or if I can't find a recording, we will post a link. We're going to talk about that in just a second. We usually post a file, like an MP3 or MP4. We'll post a link. The links will not always show up in another aspect of Planning Center that's called Media Player. So if you are using the app on your phone or on your computer, you may not see that there's a link embedded there. Okay, we'll take that one step further when we get to another tool called Music Stand. But for now, you can often find recordings for these songs here in this section of Planning Center. So Planning Center is the most important tool that we use every single week to get ready for the weekend and to know when we're on the schedule and to know what's going on in music ministry. And it's especially helpful when I have all of those things accurate within the tool. Okay. Let's see. Another tool that we often use here in music ministry is an iPad. We use an iPad. You do not have to go buy an iPad. Do not go buy an iPad if you don't have an iPad. But it's another tool that we use here. Some of us that have iPads will use them. I have them for work. I've got a couple of them for different functions. But we use an iPad, and on this iPad, I use my iPad at home for practice. I'm actually not a big tablet user, but I will use mine for practice. So there's an app that runs on here called Music Stand. We'll get to that in a second. It's another addition. It's like an add-on module for our planning center services, and it allows us to be able to see all of our charts. So on the iPad, I use an iPad for 3 different things here. I use one for charts using that app I was referring to, that add-on for Planning Center. It's called Music Stand, and I can scroll and see all of our charts. I use an iPad for our sound system controller, which doesn't affect anyone here but me and a very few limited number of people other than that. And I also use an iPad for our click tracks and our loop tracks. We use a click, we run them in our ears, and we use loop tracks sometimes to help fill in the band when need be. And speaking of click tracks, one of the other tools that we use here, we have in-ear monitoring systems, or we can hear ourselves. We use monitoring systems, and here are my in-ear monitors. We use headphones that have this 1/8 inch adapter. I think some people call it a 3.5 millimeter 1/8 inch. I don't know. We're not on metric here in the United States, so I don't know. Whatever this is, that. And monitors, so we can hear the click. And you want to be able to hear the click. All right. And speaking of additional tools, back to the iPad here for just a second. A couple of people use apps that they have on their iPad, things like ForScore or OnSong, so they'll download the charts and they'll put them into those apps, but that's another handy tool. Again, I want to emphasize, you do not need an iPad to be in music ministry here. We print charts for people. If you have an iPad and want to use it, that's great. For people that have tablets other than iProducts, Apple products, can you use Music Stand, or can you use Planning Center on your tablet? Please leave a note in the comments, maybe for some of you that do that. So that would help out everybody. So please chip in on the comments if you use something like a Samsung or a Whirlpool or something like that. That'd be great. All right. Now, speaking of the clicks, we were talking about our ears. A metronome, super helpful. Metronomes come in all shapes and sizes. This is one I encourage musicians all the time, always, to practice on a metronome. What do I mean by all the time, always? I mean always, all the time. And whether you are a drummer, my drummers have been getting a lot of videos from me recently about the importance of a metronome, but it's not all on the drummer, so if you're a guitar player, you should be practicing on a metronome. They have apps, I would presume, on the Apple on the Apple Store. I know I've got one on my phone that I use all the time. I think it was free. Metronomes are great. If you have a mechanical metronome at home, that's great. But please download a metronome and practice with a metronome. That's another tool I highly encourage. And what about vocalists? Yes, vocalists too should be practicing on a metronome. Do, re, mi, fa, so, fa, mi, re, do. Like that. Right? Metronome, another tool that we use. So please have a metronome available to you. YouTube, man, we use YouTube all the time. I use YouTube all the time. Incessantly, I'm on YouTube. I'm posting things on YouTube. I'm researching things on YouTube. Like, how do they do that on YouTube? All related to music ministry. How's that intro go? Oh, someone broke it down. There's a vocal part out there. Or Greg didn't post a link for this song that's called Goodness of God. And if you go to YouTube and put in Goodness of God, you're going to hear about 7,000 different versions of that song out there. And you can find the most popular one and at least get an idea of how the melody goes. All right. Liturgy.com, we have a subscription here for my worship leaders that are here during the week, for our music leaders that like lead daily mass and lead ensembles. We have a tool here that's called Liturgy.com. We have a subscription to online subscription to Breaking Bread and to Spirit and Song, where you can get materials like lead sheets, vocal sheets, keyboard sheets, recordings. Please take advantage of that and go listen to that. We also have a subscription to something called CCLI, Song Select. So for what I would call the more contemporary, the more often written by Protestant writers, it's all under CCLI, although now there is also a great new tool in CCLI, Song Select, for liturgy planning, and this is what the screen looks like. So I'm super excited about that. I use that often for Life Team. So those are tools that are available to our music leaders here, those that are leading ensembles, picking out music, leading at daily masses, and that type of thing. It's also available to our tech teams to go be able to download lyrics and stuff for the weekend. What else? When all else fails, Apple Music or Spotify, you want to check out a song, and let's say Greg didn't post a link. Again, you could always go Goodness of God in your Apple Music or Goodness of God in your Spotify. Which, by the way, I encourage you to listen to this music, to kind of digest and consume this music as you go through your week. Listen to stuff that people have written for liturgy. Pray with it as you go through your week. As you're driving back and forth to work, or you're walking the dog, or taking a run around the lake, or whatever you're doing. Take a listen to some of this music. It's great music. It's a very easy way to pray. Let's see. What tools am I forgetting? Please leave me a note in the comments. I'm sure we have tools here that we're using that I haven't mentioned. Please feel free to leave those in the comments as well. That helps everybody out when we do that. And again, if this video is helpful, please like it, subscribe it. Subscribe to the channel. That helps me out an awful lot as well. I think that's it for this week for what we deal with tools as it relates to music ministry. Planning Center, huge. Having a metronome to practice with, huge. Having an iPad, if you have it, great. Again, don't go out and spend a bunch of money. Even for people that are looking to pick up a set of ears with the plug, like $7, and you can hear the click. That's great. But do not go out and buy an iPad. Do not go out and buy a new computer so you can do this stuff. That's ridiculous. We talked about music stand. We talked about the apps that we can run on an iPad to help keep us organized. YouTube, Metronomes, Apple Music, Spotify. I'm sure I'm forgetting something. I'm sure you're going to leave it in the comments. And our next video in the Getting Started series will be how to prepare for Sunday. It's going to be the best thing you've ever seen. Until next time, God bless you.